Have you ever wanted to meet a character from a book? Well, today I have Makayla Galler with me on Books That Build Skills, and she is the inspiration for one of the characters in the Charms book series. And we're going to find out more from her today about how she has inspired me to write her into my story. But a little bit about her. She is a sophomore at Arizona State University and a member of the Navy ROTC. So that might give you a few clues as to how her character kind of comes into my story. And this is a really special show because she is joining us during our middle grade March reading challenge. And I'm putting extra attention on the characters in the books and the storylines so that you see how the books support you as a teenager when you're making those important life decisions as to which path to take in life. So, Makayla, welcome to the show. Start off by introducing yourself and tell us about what you're studying in college right now and what are the things that you did in high school that helped to get you to college.
Hi, everyone. I'm Makayla Galler. As Loxie said, I go to Arizona State University as a Navy ROTC student. I am currently studying Aviation Management of Transportation of Unmanned Aerial Systems, focusedly on drones. But I do have my private pilot's license and my Part 107, which is professional drone pilot. I actually earned those when I was in high school. I started off with flying gliders at 15, and then I started going into private single engine when I was 16. So, as Loxie said, some of the things that helped me get here in the university and college was getting my private pilot's license and attending a bunch of seminars at my local museum. And because my parents are a little silly, but also are super supportive of me, they enrolled me in everything STEM, sports, and art related to find my passion. And so once I found that I was interested in STEM and then narrowed it down to aviation, we really focused on how do I get involved? How do I get scholarships? Because, flying is really expensive. And then moving on from there. So, from my support of my family and then also the support of my amazing STEM teachers at my local museum, really quick shout out is Wings Over the Rockies. Back then, the thing was called Aerospace Pathways. It narrowed down on ground school. There was drones, there was, I think, astronomy they had there. And then we also had a RB-12 kit. So we built an actual airplane, which also really helped me to be a part of a team and apply that to my daily life here.
When you look ahead, what's your end goal? Like, what do you hope your career is 10 years from now?
As Loxie has maybe mentioned, is my ultimate goal is to be an astronaut one day. But right now, I am looking forward to possibly being a pilot for the Navy. I'm currently going through a curriculum here at Arizona State University with the Navy ROTC. I'm currently as a sophomore. With them, I have to go through a bunch of different classes and then I have to apply to be in a certain assignment. And that kind of wavers whether I get to fly to go in a sub or I get to go on a surface warship. Right now, I'm hoping to be an aviator, but I won't know until my senior year, which is in about 2 years.
As I keep saying, you're the inspiration for Ray, and she is one of Addie's best friends in the books. She's the brilliant, quiet one who can just drop some knowledge bombs like nobody's business. And I know that you do that quite often because I've been around you. So she starts working towards her glider pilot certification when she's just 15, because I believe you've told me that's the youngest you can be to go after that certification. So she's following in the aviation footsteps of her father and her uncle. How close does that feel to you in your own journey? Tell me about, getting your glider certification.
Yeah, I was attending a EAA Young Eagles program seminar at Wings of the Rockies, and through them they had a ground school class. And with that, completing it was a discovery flight, and going up and flying was a really great opportunity. But through that same program at the museum, they offered scholarships, and I unfortunately was too young to apply for the private pilot single engine, but I was allowed to apply to the private pilot glider section. Started flying in gliders at 15, and then I soloed and all that, and then I got my certificate at 16, which is the around the legal bout time. And then at 17 to 18, I started flying my powered. But speaking of gliders, getting involved with them, I ended up applying for that scholarship. I got that scholarship, and I started flying as soon as I could. And flight training was really interesting because, you got time, you have school, there's a whole heck of a lot of weather. I'm from Colorado. There's always something with the weather, whether it's too windy, it's snowing, it's raining, or it's way too hot. You never know. It's all up
Yep.
to how the currents are going, as some people say. But after a lot of persistence and a lot of, "Hey, let's keep going and never give up," I got that certificate at 16, and then I thought, well, that doesn't just stop me here. Let's get an engine and start flying. Because in a glider, you don't have an engine, you're towed up by another aircraft. So you're kind of like, there's like a big hook and then there's a rope, and you fly up parallel with the other aircraft and you fly up. And then at a certain altitude, you release, and the tow pilot goes that way, you go that way, and you go do your own thing. And then when you decide you're going to come in to land, you're going to land. There's no go rounds like, Cessnas and big jet airlines. You're going to come and land because you don't got power to go back up. So after learning about that, I ended up going and starting my power stuff. But right now, Ray's currently doing her glider stuff.
And so that's why it's so important for the weather, because you have to have the thermals that you're gliding around on. So that air current is what's keeping you up there and you're having fun looping around in that glider because, as she said, kids, no engine. So she is up there sailing around like a bird, no engine. So it's like that's how I think that's how you become the best pilot is you learn how to be a glider pilot first, and then you go get your engine rating and then your twin engine and, continue from there. It takes a lot of nerve to do this. I've watched and I've gone up in a glider. I love it. It's
Mm,
so quiet. It's peaceful. Yeah.
absolutely. It is
Yeah.
nothing like going up and not having to wear a headset and just have a handheld walkie talkie.
Yeah. So Ray's big dream in the books is that she wants to go to the Air Force Academy. How has being a part of the military path, or, like right now, you're hoping to become a Navy aviator. How has that shaped the way that you think and you work and you set goals?
Speaking back when I was in high school, I attended a junior ROTC, so that's dedicated to just high schoolers. I did the Air Force one. I was super set on going to the Air Force Academy. I wanted to go there. And then I attended a summer seminar out at the Naval Academy, and I thought this was amazing. And I kind of changed heart a little bit. I really liked the ocean. I didn't mind being near the sea. I learned they have an aviation program, but they also have a really cool nuclear program. So I switched my gears a little bit, and now I still applied to all five service academies. But I ended up getting the Navy ROTC scholarship, the national wide for 4 years scholarship. And I decided, well, I wanted to still be a normal college student, but also get the same opportunity as the academy kids. So ended up accepting that, and that's where I am here. But there's a lot of things that I learned throughout my JROTC time with the Air Force is that what my flying instructor was also a graduate from the Air Force Academy, so that also kind of dragged me there. But he always said to stay persistent. Never, when there's ever an opportunity someone gives, you say yes. Now,
Mhm.
sometimes there's things where you have to say yes to some things and no to some things, but you got to waver that out. I ended up saying yes to a lot of things, and that's how I kind of ended up getting here. Like, I got to say yes to going and taking tours, taking other extra flights and different aircraft. You just put yourself out there because the only thing that someone can tell you is no, and that's not the worst thing. The only other
Mm.
answer is yes, and something really cool can come out of it.
Yeah.
I also learned a little bit about, time management, staying dedicated to my work and staying focused because I did have an end goal of getting out there and to the military or astronaut. Everything came down to I need to plan this out and I need to focus and set every dedication I can to that. Now, I did have to sacrifice some things, like some my friends would go and play games while I would stay and study to finish my private license. But at the end of that day, I was able to take them up and go flying because that's what I really enjoyed doing.
So a lot of people think that an astronaut is the only way into space. And I know with you wanting to go on that path, you've looked at it from all different angles. What are some of the different jobs or roles in aviation or space industries that you've explored?
Absolutely. I've attended a few different conferences with women aviation, and there's so much more than just pilots. There's engineers, there's air traffic controllers, there's the people that are running everything behind it, the managers that are in taking care of all those traffic that's going through, making things are still running properly. It's amazing to see how everyone works together. It's kind of like a beehive where everyone has a job and they're all swarming and working together. I have a great friend who is a A&P guy who goes in and works on all the aircraft. And then I have a friend who does ATC, and she's always directing traffic in the air and in the ground, sometimes at the busiest airports to the smallest airports. There's also the people that are, engineering the design of how to build those aircraft. There's so many places that you can be involved with within just aviation instead of just flying.
One of Ray's most fun traits is that she's really quiet. And I know when you start talking, you can start talking, but also watch you just observe people and quietly like take in information. And then when she speaks, she just drops these knowledge bombs that leave Addie and Jenny stunned. And I've watched you do that. When I have inspiration from a character, from a real person, trust me, I am writing that person into my story. And I have done that, I think, pretty well with Ray. But you do this. And my big question is you're young, you're no longer a teenager anymore, but you're young, you're 20, and you are just collecting all of this information. You're learning so much. Like, how do you just like keep coming up with these fun little nuggets of information?
Absolutely. I tend to carry around a notebook with me for most of the places I go, and I jot down what people say and things that I'm listening to. As she said, like Ray, I am pretty quiet and I do observe everybody that I go and speak around. And I listen to what they say, and then I jot down what it is, and then I kind of think about it, and then I jot down another thing of what I think, and then later on I'll think back to it and be like, "Hey, this is this," and they're like, "What? How do you remember that?" Or "That is a really cool fact." I was gonna think of something like a fun fact, but there's some things when I'm with my friends that aren't aviators or people that are not really well around aviation, and I'll just look up at the sky and I'll be like, "That right there is a cumulus nimbus, and it's gonna rain in about 15 minutes." And they're like, "How the heck do you know that?" I'm like, "Just look." Look at the cloud.
Look right there. That's cool that you like write down everything. I'm also launching with all of this is word of the day. And we have the word quest. So there's going to be one word that drops every single day. And my challenge to everyone is see how many times you can use that word. Like go out there, research that word, see where it's used and how it's used, and then try, adding those little knowledge nugget drops on people by using a word that typically would not come out of your mouth. Like one of my favorite words that, is used in the book as Addie is describing her Aunt Loxley is the fact that she is always up to shenanigans. Like, have you ever heard anybody say shenanigans? But would that not just be the most fun word to start hearing in language again? So that's what the word quest is all about. And I can see that you already kind of do those kind of things. So that makes me excited. Moving on, what are a few skills that you think are especially important for students to start building now, whether they want to fly or be an engineer or do something totally different? Like, what are some really good skill sets?
As I mentioned before, put yourself out there. I know it's not necessarily like a skill based thing, but show up to things. Even if you're not feeling it, even if you don't want to, but you know that there's something that could be really cool out of it, show up anyway. You'll meet the most amazing people that you would never think of. I've like attended events thinking I'm so busy today, but you know what? Let's still show up. I've met like 3 astronauts in one day by mistake because I showed up to some event. So,
Wow.
showing up is a really big key because that if showing up is the start of everything. That's what I've learned. Now, also being persistent, as I previously said, because some things that you'll be set down, you want to keep getting back up because anything that you fail at is something that you can learn from and move forward. It's like taking a step back down on the stairs to take 3 steps forward. That is a really good thing to keep you mentally going. Another skill I would recommend is time management. I had a lot to do with that during high school. I had a lot of things going on. I had sports, I had school, I had flying, I had engineering classes, I have JROTC, a lot of things to juggle. But I made sure that I had time for myself too and had time to have fun because you don't want to overwhelm yourself with all that. So make sure you are able to time manage a little bit. But another big thing I would really recommend is networking. Like going to those events, talk to people, make eye contact, go say hi. my name's blah, 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 and shake their hands and have a conversation with them. Learn about who they are and tell them about yourself. That's just how things go. And from networking for me, that's how I ended up, going and becoming an intern. I was able to go to a bunch of cool events, things like that. Just talk to people, network, communicate. That's what I would recommend skill wise for now.
Ray ends up preventing a serious accident at an airfield in book number 3. So the girls have decided they're going to shoot a commercial and they are out at the airfield. And Ray, because of her spatial awareness and her safety mindset, is the one who's watching out for everyone because she's the seasoned one and Addie and Jenny are not used to being at an airfield. So when you're around aircraft, what kind of awareness and responsibility do you have to maintain?
Well, when you're on an airfield, there's a lot of things going on. There's planes coming by, there's cars, ambulances, maintenance people going by. So there's certain areas where you can stand, you can, walk around, but there's also things that you need to be cautious about. Like there's planes that have props going. You don't want to walk near the prop. There's you you'd imagine people would stay away, but some people walk towards the prop because it looks cool or they just don't realize it's there. So if you hear that thing going, don't walk near it. Just stay where you are and then situate the situation. But there's also, important vehicles coming by, like the snow machines. You just want to stay away from them. Make sure you're in a safe area. And then when you're, in the airplane or you're flying, you make sure that you're on your designated paths and listen to ATC from the directions they give you. And that's how everyone tends to stay safe.
So one of the fun things that happens in book 3 is that the girls go on a screen-free vacay. It's a road trip where no screens are allowed, so the phones get put away. They take them because you gotta have some to take pictures with, but they're not allowed to look at them or cheat and use a GPS to get from Huntsville to Mount Vernon where they're headed to because they're going to go explore George Washington's home and his farm. So Aunt Loxley makes them do everything with a paper roadmap, and they have to be the co-pilot and direct her as she's driving. So when you're planning a flight, how does all of that mapping and navigation go into what you're doing?
When part of basic training of becoming a pilot, you learn how to use it on the paper charts. And then you can start using, online stuff. But they really focus on using this giant paper map with just, where different airports are, where not the fly areas, certain elevation areas, big places where towers could be. You look at the map, you find, okay, I'm flying from BJC to KFLM. All right, there's a huge Bravo right here. Let's not fly in that because there's normally a lot of traffic in there, and there's a safer route around it. So you take this little line and you draw a line up to that to your next point, which is probably Longmont. That's a location that I'm stating. And you're right. All right, this is my visual reference, and you go up to here. It's kind of like when you're driving and you have certain street names and different roads you want to go on to, different landmarks you want to look out for. It's pretty big that you pay attention to your surroundings, especially when you're flying, but also driving, because, sometimes you can get lost. When you're from the sky, everything kind of looks the same.
There's a moment in the book, and we're now in book 4, where the girls have been invited to this really big STEM conference, and Ray's feeling left out and has to do what Jackson calls the ultimate briefing. So it's basically her making the case for why she belongs and should be able to go along on this trip. Have you ever had to advocate for yourself like that and use the facts and preparation, like sit there and think it out? So he makes her, and you can download the ultimate briefing off of the website. If you go to charmsbookseries.com and go to the downloads, I have created this form so that all the teenagers out there can start thinking this over and have your 3 pros and your 1 con and your ultimate pitch. So have you ever had to do this before?
Actually have. For me personally, they were trying to close the airport that I was a part of, that would I fly out of with gliders, and I took it upon myself and a few others. We went to the Boulder City Council and we stated our case. We stated why we think they should keep the airport, what goes on there that they may not know. Some of those government people don't know what goes on at the airport. There's a lot of medical, medvac people. There's the firefighting planes that fly out of there. They didn't know that. But I went up and I wrote myself a paper and I took some note cards and I put big bullet points on there and I went over and I stated my case and said, this is what is here, this is what we have, and this is the information, and this is how it affects me and all these other people. I make sure to be a polite, I made sure to be confident in the way I speak, and I made sure to look them in the eye and state the case. Now, I was definitely very nervous at the beginning, but the more I was starting to speak, the more confident I got, and the more slower instead of rushing words got. It just sometimes you may be nervous to go state what you're thinking and not confident of putting your out there. Just do it. It's for yourself. No one takes care of anyone better than yourself. That's what people say here in the military. If you have something going on, no one will advocate better than yourself for yourself.
So Ray isn't always on the camera because Jenny and Addie are the ones who are usually in front of the camera doing stuff. And Ray is really good at stepping in behind the scenes and making all the magic happen. So sometimes she's in front of the lens, sometimes she's behind the lens, running all the production and all the filming and letting Jenny be the little butterfly that she is. What different types of communication are you skilled at? I know this list, but I want to hear you say it for all of our audience to hear so that they understand. And kids, write notes. Be taking notes while you're listening to Makayla talk because she gives golden advice. So, from speaking to writing to working behind the scenes, tell us how you use different forms of communication.
Absolutely. Now, there's different types of situations you can be in. There's professional, there's typical conversations between friends, there's interviews, there's podcasts, there's, congressmen people talking and advocating. That's a big one. Trying to think maybe, in a check ride, you're confident, you're communicating in that way, and it's a very high stressful environment. But there's also, making fun videos, there's, filming, there's making little movies. There's always some type of communication going around, and you just got to make sure you say it in a nice, proper way. Now, sometimes people won't hear you. Well, you need to get up there and you got to say, okay, this is what this is. Let's take a moment and breathe. Sometimes it can get in high sensitive situations. Just ease it down a little bit, take a moment, breathe, and then continue communicating. For like video recording on interviews, you got a plan beforehand. You read over, the questions, and you come up with answers that you think might best bet the people that you're talking to. And there's the same thing for interviews. You kind of think about the best questions that you think they might ask you, and you be able to have some type of story to bring up front. There's, podcasts where, you have your story, they ask you questions and you give your story. Kind of like this, but a little different. There's, when you're doing a movie, you have a script, you're planning out different words people may say or different actions that you want or different side angles, especially with like camera work. You want to communicate where people are standing. Takes a lot of people and a lot of communicating for that. So never fret.
Have you taken any acting classes? Because I've watched you speak. I met you 5 years ago. So when you were 15 and you came to San Diego and sat down on an airfield and we filmed a class for a camp and you were just, and so I've watched you grow up and speak at a variety of different things. So I was wondering if you had any training.
Absolutely. My dad, he's a director and producer. He's been throughout Hollywood, but he's not doing that right now. But I did learn a little bit from him. And then my mom, she did work in the movie business too. So I did have a little stuff from them, but I was really big in theater in middle school and high school. So I always did plays. I've done Peter Pan. Surprisingly enough, I was Michael in that play, but I've done a bunch of other theater related things. I've also attended some dance classes and different improv classes throughout middle school and high school. So having that experience kind of helps me with communicating. But there was also a few classes in college that I've taken that was when I was still in high school. I took some college classes that were used with communication. So learning from those things definitely helped me to the day.
In book number 5, I see we're just going through the whole series. Ray is in all of these books. So they are at the STEM conference in Denver, Colorado. And guess what? All 3 of the girls have been practicing and they're prepared. and they're ready for that keynote speech because normally teenagers aren't there to give an opening keynote speech for a major conference. That's a big coup to win. So they're totally prepared, and their favorite STEM teacher, Dr. Bourne, has been stressing out trying to write grants and doing all that other work that you don't see behind the scenes that adults have to do. And he has not practiced at all. So he is just fumbling and having the worst time. And the girls step up and they save the day because he's on their team, they're on his team. And when you see a team member having a problem, you step in there and you help them. So, the girls, the teenagers, help an adult get through the practice that he needs that night before they give the big keynote the next day. So, how have you stepped up, if you have a story of how have you stepped up and saved the day, or have you ever been that kid who helped an adult when it really mattered?
Yeah, there was a competition that I was competing in with drone soccer. There's some videos around that if you want to search it up.
Yeah.
But with drone soccer, we were in South Korea competing at the world tournament. And being in a high stress situation, there was a lot of things going on and a lot of people not knowing what's going on. And from that, because I was a team captain and my coaches had no idea what was going on because I was communicating with some other people about what is going on and they didn't know where we were going, what was going on, and who's talking. So me and my co-captain, we both talked to him and tried to inform him the best we could and try to bring him along and show him the ropes of everything that was going on because he wasn't familiar with everything because we were the players, but he also needed to know some things going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's okay because he was like, "You know what? I understand. I don't know what's going on." So he was very humble about it, and we directed him as best as we could and politely as we could
Yeah.
because, he's still our elder and he is, someone that we respect.
If you could give one piece of advice to students who feel quiet or unsure or they don't really know where to fit into yet, what would you tell them?
I tell them, put yourself out there. You never know what the opportunities bring you, and you don't know what you like and what you don't like until you try them. I learned that gymnastics is not my thing. I am not a big fan of tumbling, but I am a big fan of swimming. I tried that. There's a bunch of things that you may not ever know if you don't try and put yourself out there.
Yeah. And I 100% agree with you on that. You don't know until you know. So you've got to try everything. And your best friend might love gymnastics and you don't love gymnastics. And so you have to do it. You have to try it yourself so that you can experience it from your own viewpoint instead of listening to somebody else and forming a decision based on somebody else's experience. So 100% agree with that. That's a great way to wrap up the show. Thank you for being on the show with us, Makayla. Everyone, go check out her whole background on LinkedIn. She has a bigger LinkedIn profile than I do. It is amazing. And
Thank
she's
you.
just at the start of her career. So you need to be following her. Take notes and just be ready to follow in her footsteps, kids. Okay. So all of you who are like in seventh, eighth, ninth grade, watch what she does because you'll want to watch her. And thanks for joining us at Books That Build Skills. If today's story sparked an idea or gave you courage or helped you see what's possible, then we did our job. Now remember, skills aren't born, they are built. One choice, one challenge, and one brave step at a time. So hit subscribe, share this with somebody who needs it, follow along, and keep exploring, building, reading, and dreaming big. I'm Loxley Brown. This is Books That Build Skills, and you are just getting started.